So, Dr. J, I've heard you talk about the money management system. What is this exactly?
Yeah, it is a budget system. It is not the perfect one. It is not the one you have to use. It just seems to work with people. If it doesn't work with you, pick another one. So we'll start with that. All right, so here's the money management system at its core. It's actually based on work on time management. And if you're ever like one of those people stuck in time and you're trying to figure out like I'm procrastinating, you can break your stuff into what I must do, should do, could do, and won't do. By the way, when you do this for time, you're going to find there's a lot of things that are absorbing your time that you don't have to do. That's a separate discussion. So we use the same thing for money. So here's where we start. We start with how much money do I have? And that's how much is coming in. In general, your goal should be to take 10% of that off the top for safety and security. That's your emergency fund. Now, you might not be able to afford that right now, but let's just pencil that in for a second. Then we're going to break into our musts. So here's how musts work. That keep the roof over our head or that we're required by law to pay. That's it. It's also your needs. So your musts have to be paid each month. And let me kind of run through this. So we got rent or mortgage, property taxes, home insurance, homeowners association, anything like that, health insurance, groceries. Now, Katie, we've talked about groceries versus dining out. This is your groceries. This is not dining out. Dining out is not a must. I know we might argue on that, but it's not a must. I kind of think it is sometimes too, but it's not. And then utilities, electric, water, sewer, gas, heat. For your car or transportation, that's going to go in here. Public transportation, we have it. Auto loan, gas. And then your credit card, student loans, anything your minimum monthly payment, you're required to do that. If you have any other like legalese you got into and you have a payment, that goes into must. Now here's what's going to happen. Add up all your musts. And either one of two things are going to happen. Either your musts are going to be more than you make each month, in which case you need to do something immediately, or you got some more money left over. So here's what's going to happen. If you get to a point and your musts are more than you bring in each month, you have to change something immediately. You're going into debt each month before the month even starts. That means you might have to pick up extra work, might have to cut back on your housing. I don't know, but that is that's a red flashing light. Whoop, 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 whoop. So pick up some gig work, something, if you can't cover your musts. Housing is really expensive right now in the US, so that's probably going to be the one that's going to need to get adjusted if that's the issue. If not, we move on to our shoulds. Now, what we're doing is we're taking what's left over, moving to the next step. So shoulds include some things like internet access. Now, people go, well, that's a must. If you're working from home and you have to have it for work, okay, it's a must. For everybody else, it's a should. Cable TV, cell phone. Things like disability life insurance are going there. Things we should spend, but we don't have to. Also things we call sinking funds where we're putting money away for the future, like auto repairs, home repairs, gifts. Katie, do you have other things that should be on your should list? Like you feel like you have to pay it each month?
Yeah, I was trying to think through when you were talking about it. Nothing comes to mind right now.
Okay. If you have pets, they go on either must or shoulds. Me and my wife can have some debates on that. The question is, do you have to have a pet or do you want to have a pet? I am not getting in that battle. I'm not going to win that one. You say it has to be a must. Like things like Netflix, that's not a should, that's a could. I can live without Netflix, most people. There is a balancing act. And what usually happens when people are working in the money management system, there's other shoulds that they try to make musts. So here's the test. The test is, do I need that to live? You don't need Netflix to live. You don't. Now, some people will say, well, I've got medical issues. Yep, that could be on must or should. I'm in therapy, must or should. Even the financial planning stuff here, this is a should. It's not a must. So we're kind of breaking it apart. Now, here's what happens. If you're in debt, any other money you got left goes to paying off your debt. And that's where Katie loses her mind because then she doesn't get to go out to eat.
Exactly.
Okay, here's the thing. Debt's stealing from your future and you're paying for things you purchased in the past. So when it comes to paying off debt, we have some separate videos on it. We can talk about the snowball and the avalanche method and all that. Don't care. We can talk about it a different way. Your paying off debt is a should, which technically means if you have debt, you don't have any money for coulds. You can break the rules if you have to. It's your budget. Don't go crazy on this. If you're saving for retirement, saving for investing, that probably should be in shoulds, not coulds. So let's talk about coulds. Coulds are really your discretionary money. That's where Katie's pocket money, alcohol, and dining out. Now, if you haven't seen the other videos, go back to them because we've talked a lot about all three of those. But I didn't just call those out, but that's where most of our money disappears. You hear about discretionary income, but we're spending on things we could spend money on, not what we must or should. What do you think about that, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. And I think, I was just thinking about the example of like, we have a car right now that we're thinking about when do we sell it and get an upgraded car? Because in the past, I've always just basically run my cars into the ground until they basically won't go anymore and they're long paid off. But I got one that feels a little bit nicer this time, and I'm like, do I sell it after it's a few years old and get something else, or do I run this one into the ground again? So I'm thinking about the coulds and shoulds and where does this fit in?
Yep. So replacing it would be a could. When it's too expensive to fix, it's a should. And when it doesn't work at all, it's a must.
Okay, that makes sense.
And all I'm trying to do is get you to think through this. And by the way, for those with spouses, categorizing your budget like this, must, shoulds, coulds, that's what's going to be the hard discussion. Now, we talked about in a previous about the pocket money. Pocket money goes in coulds. We each get a little bit of money to spend. I'm going through the list, and everybody has their hobby or whatever it is. Hobbies go in coulds, not shoulds. Now, there are those who believe their hobbies are shoulds. If I don't have this, well, it's a balancing act. My wife and I have this debate. When I have extra time, which right now, unfortunately, is not much, I like doing gaming, video gaming. I've got a laptop that I use, and we also have two Mastiffs. So one of our Mastiffs broke off half the screen of my laptop, the hinge. So it's like hanging, flapping. And my wife's like, well, you could get a new laptop. And I'm like, heck no. I've got like a C-clamp on there. I've got a glue. Okay, my laptop's looking a little junky, but it works. So replacing it is a could. Now, I'm cheap, so I don't want to replace my laptop. My wife thinks it's a should. And she feels bad because it was her dog that did it. Now, it's her dog when he causes trouble. It's my dog when he's good. But it was her dog that did it. So she thinks it's a must. So this is where we start having this balancing act. Now, if you have extra money coming in each month, let's say you have an extra paycheck or whatever, you would just adjust the categories to fit. Your musts are pretty set. So we put out shoulds, pay off more debt, whatever else it is. And shoulds should be where your goals are. So this is where saving for travel, that's a should. Now you go, well, why isn't that a could? Because it's a goal that we're working towards. Another example of this. I must take my wife out for her anniversary. I should take my mom out for dinner. Okay, it sounds silly, but it's must and should. There's a big difference. If I don't take my wife out on her anniversary, I'm not coming home. Okay, I can't have the roof over my head. So that's the must versus the shoulds. What do you think about that, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense.
All right, so the one we haven't talked about is the won'ts. We all have a naughty list. Okay, for me, it's Amazon. I haven't made it a full won't yet, but we all have things. And really, at the priority list, if it's not in a must, should, or could, it's a won't. So what's the area you really need to make a won't, Katie?
Well, you can tell me if I'm getting this right. So, for example, if I just kind of spend on, let's say, clothes, that I don't actually need any clothes right now. So this is definitely in the could category, but maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm getting is maybe it would be like the could is I have a budget for that, but if I go over, then it goes into the won't.
All right, so let's talk about clothes here. Clothes are a fun one. Basic clothes to do your work and job is a must. Cool. I don't think that's where you're at. Is that fair, Katie?
That's fair.
Should is, hey, I need to upgrade my wardrobe for my new job. That's not what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I have a good example of this. I have gained some weight over the pandemic, and I was wearing pants that were too small and they were uncomfortable. So, those I upgraded to a new size that fits, and it's been life changing. I love it. So, I would say that would probably be should.
Should, yes. Now, here's the thing. I said, let's put some money for pocket money in the coulds. Your clothing might actually be a won't, especially if there's a site or two that's a problem area. Aha, see, you look at Katie's face, you can see she's not going to call them out here because we're not going to call out the specific sites. My wife has a few of these that I'm like, I'm going to block at the router and save myself thousands. But that might be a won't. So, a great example of this is taking the app off your phone. There are some apps that are dangerous that way, where they send you a notification. Here's a deal. And you know it's never a deal. My wife and I just had this discussion. She wanted to buy something at Target. Now, we're in the middle of Mississippi. There's actually no Target right where we are. So she goes online. Thing she wants to buy is $30. Okay. But free shipping is at 50. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to buy $20 of junk to get free shipping. The shipping's $5. This is the trap we get sucked into.
This one gets me a lot too. Yeah, I am guilty of this one.
So she bought $20 of stuff she didn't need. I swear I should put Target on the won't list. For some people, it's bad habits. Great example of this, apps on your phone or games. Those can be really expensive. Others, it might be some bad habits, casino. I think the apps on the phone are a great example where people are spending a lot of money on games and other things and not realizing, I mean, hundreds and thousands of dollars that just need to go away and you get sucked in. Those games really are made to encourage you to buy. So another great example is the new iPhone comes out, which it always does. That's a could. And the reality is I'm going to have to save my pocket money. I don't know. The current versions are, $1,200. So I got to save my pocket money for 6 months to afford it, which by the way, they'll have a new version out by then too. So I'm stuck in this cycle, but that's a could. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to link below. There's actually a Google Doc that you can sheet that you can actually go in, fill in your must, shoulds, coulds. And what you're going to do is each month you're going to update it as you go along. My paycheck changes. I have to change each account. It's just a way to kind of push you through. And I know, Katie, you don't love spending a whole lot of time in Excel. It shouldn't take you too long to do it after you do it once. The first month is like, well, what do we pay for auto insurance? People don't even have a clue. Put it in there. And now you're tracking it month to month. Now, if you really want to be painful, I don't recommend this, but you can go back to last month and put what you spent into the categories, and you're going to find all the money you were spending was in coulds.
Yeah, I believe that.
It's a little painful, but I actually do it once a year. I take all of my bills, I add it, because if I put on a credit card or bank, they usually categorize them anyway. And I'll look at what did I spend at dining for the year? And then what I encourage you is do the math of how many hours you had to work for that. And it's never fun. The other thing that's going to happen is if you have charges coming in monthly that aren't in here, you may have to cancel those. So a lot of people used COVID as a good reason to get out of gym memberships because those are really hard to get out of. But if you haven't gone in months, that needs to get canceled, even if it takes you 2 hours on the phone to do it. Watch out for those monthly charges, because if it's not on a must, should, could, that's a won't. I need to delete. Try it, see what happens. If the system doesn't work for you. Now, by the way, when I say try it, get 3-4 months. First month is always going to be a problem. If it doesn't work for you, you can find a different budget. They're all similar wants, needs, figuring out for the month. It's just about what works for you. And if your spouse is one of those, so my wife is not too much into the finances, the rule is they have to make one change to the budget every month. Don't care what. They can change one number up or down. I don't care, but just so they don't go, oh, Katie, you got it, take care of it. You don't want that in a relationship. So you want to make sure you're all working together.